Welcome back to Hidden Hearts Podcast. I'm your host, Anna Blake, and today we have a story that will make you question everything you think you know about family, loyalty, and the true meaning of wealth. What would you do if your only child betrayed you in the most unimaginable way? Would you seek revenge, or would you find a way to teach them the lesson they desperately needed to learn? Today, I'm sitting down with Martha Collins, a remarkable woman whose journey from heartbreak to empowerment is nothing short of extraordinary. Martha, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Anna. It's not easy sharing this story, but I hope it helps someone out there who might be going through something similar.
Before we dive in, can you paint us a picture of your life before everything changed?
Of course, I'm 71 years old now, but my story really begins 6 months before that terrible phone call. My husband Thomas and I had been married for 45 years. We had a simple but beautiful life together. Every morning he'd make me coffee with cream, kiss my forehead, and say good morning, my love.
That sounds incredibly sweet.
It was, until the morning it all ended. We were having breakfast, just like we had done for thousands of mornings. Thomas was pouring my coffee when he suddenly clutched his chest and collapsed. Heart attack. He was gone before the ambulance arrived.
I'm so sorry, Martha. That must have been devastating.
It was like the ground disappeared beneath my feet, but I thought I wasn't alone. My daughter Sarah, she was 45 at the time, became very attentive after the funeral. She visited 3 times a week, helped with arrangements, even convinced me to see a doctor for a checkup.
That must have been comforting.
I thought so. Looking back now, I can see the signs I missed. But grief has a way of blinding you to people's true intentions.
When did things start to change?
I was sitting in that doctor's waiting room when my phone rang. Sarah's voice sounded different, cold, detached. She said, "Mum, we're leaving for London tomorrow. I've already sold your cottage and your car. We needed the funds. Goodbye."
She just hung up?
Just like that. 45 years of raising her, sacrificing for her, loving her unconditionally, and she discarded me with a 2-minute phone call.
How did you react in that moment?
You know what's strange? I didn't cry. For the first time in months, I felt this odd sense of calm, because in that moment I remembered something Thomas had given me 3 days before he died, a sealed envelope. He told me, "If something happens to me, open this when you're ready."
And you'd forgotten about it.
Completely. With the grief and the funeral arrangements, it had slipped my mind entirely. But suddenly, sitting in that uncomfortable plastic chair surrounded by sick people, I remembered exactly where I'd put it.
What was going through your mind?
I was thinking about how Sarah had always been Thomas's favorite. He spoiled her, gave her everything she wanted. When she married Richard, that investment banker, Thomas was thrilled. But I always sensed something off about Richard. He never liked me, always saw me as an inconvenience.
So what happened when you got home?
I went straight to my bedroom, opened my dresser drawer, and there it was, that envelope with my name in Thomas's neat handwriting. My hands were shaking as I opened it.
Can you tell us what was inside?
Legal documents, property deeds, bank certificates, and a letter from Thomas that explained everything. Anna, my husband, had been secretly investing our savings for decades. We weren't just comfortable, we were wealthy, very wealthy.
But you had no idea.
None whatsoever. Thomas had been a bus driver for 40 years. Every penny we saved, he'd invested wisely. He'd bought properties, invested in businesses. By the time he died, we owned 6 rental properties, including the apartment building where Sarah and Richard lived.
Wait, Sarah was living in a building you owned?
Yes, but she had no idea. Thomas had put everything under a company name. According to his letter, he'd kept it secret because he didn't want Sarah to know about our wealth. He wrote, "If she knew we had money, her attitude would change. I want her to love us for who we are, not what we have."
That's incredibly insightful and heartbreaking given what happened.
The irony wasn't lost on me. Sarah had sold my cottage, which wasn't even hers to sell, and kicked me out, all while thinking I was practically destitute. In reality, I was worth over $30 million.
30 million? That's substantial.
I couldn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about the little girl who used to sit on Thomas's lap, laughing at his jokes. Where did that sweet child go? When did she become so calculating?
Did Sarah contact you again?
The next morning. Her tone was different, softer, but I'd learned to recognize the manipulation. She said they'd transferred my share from the sales into my account, 30%. She actually said, "That's fair, right?"
30% of your own property.
Exactly. She told me they needed the money for Richard's incredible business opportunity in London. They'd be gone for at least 6 months. Then she said, and I'll never forget this, "Don't worry, Mum. When we get back, we'll help you find a small apartment, something that fits your needs."
How did you respond?
I said, "Have a safe trip, honey." And she actually thanked me for being so understanding, so compassionate, she said.
What did you do next?
I called Thomas's attorney, David Harrison. He'd been at the funeral, offered his condolences, told me to call if I needed anything. Well, I needed him. When I showed him Thomas's documents, his face went pale.
What did he say?
He confirmed everything was legitimate. The cottage sale was fraudulent since Sarah had no right to sell it. We could get it back immediately and press charges for fraud.
Did you press charges?
No. I told David I wanted to handle this differently. I wanted everything done quietly, in secret. I wanted to get my properties back, but I didn't want Sarah to know I was behind it. Not yet.
You were planning something.
I was. Over the next few weeks, David worked discreetly to nullify the fraudulent sale and help me gain control of all my assets. Officially, I was still the poor widow everyone pitied, but privately, I was orchestrating everything.
That must have been surreal, living this double life.
It was strange. My neighbor Helen would bring me food, offer to help with groceries, speaking to me in that soft tone people use with the unfortunate, and I'd smile, thank her, all while knowing I could buy her entire block if I wanted to.
When did things start to unravel for Sarah?
About 3 weeks after they left, David called with news. Richard had debts, lots of them. He'd been taking out loans using their apartment as collateral, not knowing he didn't actually own it. When the banks discovered this, they started investigating.
So Richard had been lying to Sarah too.
About everything. There was no business opportunity in London. He was running from his creditors. He'd used the money from my cottage sale to fund their escape.
Did Sarah know about the debts?
Not until it all started falling apart. I got a call from Helen one afternoon. She'd heard through the grapevine that Richard was in serious legal trouble. Sarah would have to come back to sort out the mess.
How did you feel when you heard that?
Honestly, calm. Everything was unfolding exactly as I'd anticipated. Sarah had trusted Richard completely, sacrificed our relationship for him, and now she was about to discover who he really was.
When did she come back?
A month after they'd left. Helen saw her arrive alone, pale, exhausted, carrying one suitcase. Richard had stayed in London, or so Sarah thought.
What actually happened?
David discovered Richard had run off with a younger woman. The business opportunity was a fantasy. He'd been planning his escape all along, using Sarah's money to fund it.
And Sarah had no idea?
None. She arrived to find an eviction notice on her apartment door. David had sent it as part of my plan, giving her 30 days to vacate the property.
Did she call you?
The next morning, she sounded desperate. "Mum, I need to talk to you urgently. I got this strange eviction notice." I played along, acting confused, asking questions. She begged me to help her figure out what was happening.
What did you say?
I told her to come over, and when she arrived, I barely recognized her. She'd lost weight, had dark circles under her eyes. She looked broken.
That must have been hard to see.
It was. But I reminded myself why I was doing this. She needed to learn lessons that only rock bottom could teach her.
What did she tell you?
Everything. Richard had abandoned her in London with a hotel waitress. There was never any business. He'd been accumulating debts for years, forging her signature on loans. The banks were coming after her for over $100,000, and she had nowhere to go.
Did she ask to stay with you?
Eventually. First, she apologized, really apologized for what she'd done. She said she didn't have anyone else. And do you know what was hardest? Seeing my manipulative, calculating daughter reduced to this vulnerable, desperate woman reminded me of when she was a child coming to me with her problems.
Did you let her stay?
I did, but I didn't reveal the truth yet. I told her, "This will always be your home." She cried, thanked me, promised she wouldn't be a burden. She thought I was still poor, still vulnerable, still the mother she'd kicked aside.
How long did you keep up this pretense?
Several weeks. I watched her struggle with decisions she'd never had to make before. She got a job cleaning offices at night. My daughter, who'd lived comfortably for 40 years, was mopping floors.
That must have been painful to watch.
It was excruciating. Every night she'd come home exhausted, and I wanted to tell her she didn't have to do this, but I knew if I rescued her too soon she wouldn't learn the full lesson.
What lesson was that?
The value of work, of dignity, of earning your own way. One night she came home and told me about a woman she worked with, a 60-year-old who'd been cleaning for 20 years after her husband left. This woman had asked Sarah why she was there, and Sarah admitted she'd ruined all her opportunities by following a worthless man.
Sounds like Sarah was starting to understand.
She was. She started saving money to help her co-worker pay for childcare. She kept the job even after I could have told her she didn't need it. She was changing, becoming someone I didn't recognize, someone better.
When did you finally reveal the truth?
After about 2 months, David arranged a meeting at his office. I told Sarah we were seeing a lawyer about her debt problems. When we arrived, David handed her documents showing she wasn't responsible for Richard's debts. We had evidence of fraud.
How did she react?
She was confused at first. Then David showed her the second set of documents, the property deeds, the bank statements, everything. I watched her face as she realized the truth.
That her mother had been wealthy all along.
Yes. She looked at me and asked, "How long have you known?" I told her since the day she'd called me from the doctor's office. She realized I'd known everything when she came back begging for help.
What did she say?
She asked why. Why did you let me suffer when you could have helped me? And I told her the truth. Because you needed to learn the value of what you'd lost, the value of family, of respect, of responsibility.
That must have been a powerful moment.
She cried, deep, understanding tears, not self-pity but genuine comprehension of what she'd done. She said, "I abandoned you when you needed me most, and I said yes, and I saved you anyway, but not by giving you money. I saved you by letting you learn to save yourself."
How is your relationship now?
Completely transformed. Sarah kept her cleaning job for another 6 months even after knowing she didn't need it. She went back to school, studied social work. She wanted to help other women in situations like hers.
That's beautiful growth.
It is. We turned the cottage into a temporary shelter for women leaving domestic violence situations. Sarah runs the program through her job. The place that represented her worst betrayal now represents her redemption.
And Richard?
Arrested in London for fraud, deported. Sarah said she doesn't feel anything about him anymore. No anger, no regret. That chapter is closed.
Martha, what would you say to someone listening who's dealing with a similar betrayal from a family member?
I'd say this. True love isn't always gentle. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone face the consequences of their actions, not to punish them, but to teach them. Sarah and I have a better relationship now than we ever had before, not despite what happened, but because of it.
That's incredibly wise. One last question. Do you think Thomas knew what was going to happen?
I believe he suspected it. That's why he left me those documents with that specific letter. He knew Sarah had a weakness, and he knew I'd need the tools to help her find her strength. In a way, he's still taking care of both of us from beyond the grave.
What a remarkable story, Martha. Thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Thank you for listening, Anna. If my story helps even one person understand the difference between enabling and truly helping someone they love, then it was worth sharing.
That was Martha Collins sharing her extraordinary journey on Hidden Hearts podcast. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give someone isn't rescuing them from their problems, it's giving them the space to learn how to rescue themselves. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who might need to hear Martha's story.